Okay, hey guys, so the last video I talked about why do we have government? And the answer was really simple. It's just to protect us and our private property from each other. We need to get out of that state of war, that state of chaos and anarchy, and we need to have something that brings about order and law, but not so much that the government itself starts violating the rights and the safety of the citizenry itself, right? So we need law for liberty. The irony of liberty is that it only exists when there is law, because the fundamental flaw in the entire system of all humanity and government is human nature, right? And again, that's where assumptions really come into play. What is your belief about human nature? Because if you fundamentally believe that human nature is good at its core, there is no need for government. None at all. But if you do not think that it's good to its core, if there's even the question that it's good to its core, then humans need government. Here's the problem. If the same people who need government, that warrant the point of government, are put into positions of power, we now have a new problem. You see, we take the very same people that needed government and we put them into government itself. So what protects us and our private property from government? Because those same people that we needed protecting from in the first place now have more power. So my private property and everything else, my liberty, is now potentially going to be violated by the very thing that I created to protect my private property and my liberty. And this is where the founders really had to grapple and struggle to figure out, what do we do to make sure to protect our citizenry from the government itself? Because we know we can't have a citizenry that's running rampant and wild with anarchy and chaos. So we need government. But we also know that if we have government full of the same people that were rampant and running wild and needed government in the first place, it's highly likely that these people who now possess more power are just as likely to oppress and suppress the liberty of the citizenry that needed government in the first place. So what do we do about that? And they were brilliant people. And we're so blessed in this country to have an answer to this question. But before I give you the answer, I'm gonna insert a concept into your political thinking. Maybe it's something you haven't thought of before, but it really needs to be reinserted into the political discussions in America today, because this fundamentally changes everything about the way we talk about politics. So much so that I wish I could get in front of every single person in the United States and say, you need to know what arbitrary power is. Because everything you're talking about, everything you feel emotional about, everything comes down to, do you want an arbitrary government or not? This is an incredibly unifying message and it has nothing to do with partisanship. It's all very simple. Arbitrary power. Arbitrary power is power that comes from nowhere. It is power that is unconfined or undefined, right? So it is power that essentially exists because it does. This is how most governments, save for a few, throughout all history have existed. They possessed power and they could do whatever they wanted with it to their citizenry. Nobody could tell them no. If the king said off with your head, again, it was off with your head, even if you were his queen, right? This is the way governments work. This is all citizens have ever known. We're incredibly spoiled in this country that we don't even know what the concept of arbitrary power in government is. A government that can do whatever it wants to you at any moment. The fact that we don't know that, we should all be incredibly humbled and thankful every single day that we don't know that. Because this is most everyone's experience throughout history. Every government has always had the power they had because they were government. They needed no justification. They needed no explanation. They simply were. They were government and they had the power they had. Every king, every emperor, every whatever you want to call them throughout history, that's arbitrary power. Power that is unconfined and undefined. There's nothing to tell government no. If government wants to do it, government can do it and needs no justification. So, the question that this video is looking at is, why do we have a constitution? So I'm going to give you a very practical example here. Think in terms of an employee-employer mindset. and I want to sort of break this down in a very simplistic way, because I think we can think of politics and government in very big, broad, sort of overarching terms, and then we actually don't have a clue what we're talking about. So let's think of government in terms of an employer-employee mindset. Most Americans understand this mindset. If you're an employer, you're going to hire an employee, right? So in the scenario of government, we created government to do a job for us. So in this scenario, who's the employer? We are. We the people are the employer. Who's the employee? Government. We pay government to do a job for us. Next question. How many employers hire someone and they don't give them a job description? Think about it. And yet, how many of us, when we put someone into political office, we assume they have no job description? We assume they have arbitrary power and the ability to do anything, right? And the key here, this is why our role, our job as citizens is so critical, is this. How motivated is an employee going to be to know or follow their job description if they know that their employer is unaware of what that job description actually says? As citizens, we should all have an investment to know what our government's job is. Because in this country, we have something called a constitution, both at the local and the state and the federal level. This constitution is literally our government's job description. Guess what it does? It tells government what it can do. That's it. It says, government, this is your job. We, the people, have empowered you to do a job for us, and we gave you a job description. This is it. Nothing more. So the Constitution both defines and confines, by default of defining, the power of government. It literally tells government no. It is a standard outside of government telling government what it can do and what it cannot do. It says, government, you must do this, and that's it. No more. It is the government that governs our government. Therefore, this is critical. Our government in the United States does not have arbitrary power, because where does it get the power it has? From the Constitution, from its job description. It derives all the power it has from that job description and nowhere else. Therefore, it cannot do anything outside of that job description. Which of course would lead to my next video of, well, if it does something outside of its job description, where does it get the power to do what it does? I'll let you chew on that before I answer that in my next video. So the Constitution is our government's job description. It confines our government. It tells our government exactly what it can do, and therefore by default, what it cannot do. Now, I'm not talking about the Bill of Rights. If you want to discuss the Bill of Rights, we'll get to that. But right now, what I'm talking about is literally the actual Constitution itself, the thing that defines the role and the powers of our government, and therefore confines it. It's a remarkable thing. The fact that we actually have something outside of our government telling our government no. We have something we can appeal to protect us from government itself. The beauty and the rarity of that should blow us all away. So why do we have a constitution? We have a constitution because we need something to protect us and our private property from government. So it comes down to this. We create government to protect us and our private property from each other, and we create that constitution to protect us and our private property from government. Please go read these articles because this is essential as American citizens. It's a very unifying message. This is so important. We don't want an arbitrary, unconfined government. We don't want a government that can do whatever they want to us. If you think about it this way, an example I give, if you're in your house and the police come barging in your house one night with no reason and no cause, what do you appeal to? You will appeal to the Constitution to protect you from that government. Now imagine that you're in that house and the police come barging in and there is no constitution. What do you say? What can you say? Literally nothing. Government can do whatever it wants to you. This is not a partisan message. This is something that everyone can get behind, because let me tell you this, the only group of people that love arbitrary power are those in government.